The air hung heavy with secrets, a palpable tension that seemed to seep into every shadow. A chill wind whispered through the ancient oak trees, their branches clawing at the night sky like skeletal fingers, as if trying to grasp the very essence of the night. Moonlight, fractured and cold, spilled through the dusty attic window, illuminating a lone figure hunched over a typewriter, the keys clacking in a rhythmic dance of creation and despair. This was Amelia Gray, a writer living in the shadow of her own success, her Gothic manner a reflection of the darkness within her. The house, with its creaking floors and whispering walls, seemed to echo her inner turmoil. Her latest novel, The Manipulator, was due, and the pressure was mounting. Each page she wrote felt like a battle against an unseen force, a struggle to maintain her sanity. But there was another, more sinister presence lurking in the shadows, a stalker obsessed with Amelia and her words. His presence was a dark cloud, always looming, always threatening. Amelia could feel his eyes on her, a constant weight on her back, an invisible chain that bound her to her fears. Each ring of the doorbell, every creak of the floorboard sent shivers down her spine. The house, once her sanctuary, had become a prison of dread and paranoia. He was always there, just out of sight, a phantom haunting her every waking moment. His presence was a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked just beyond the edge of her reality. She was a prisoner in her own home, the walls closing in, threatening to suffocate her. The once spacious rooms now felt like cages, each corner hiding a potential threat. The line between reality and the dark fantasies she wove in her novels was blurring, leaving Amelia teetering on the edge of a terrifying abyss. Her mind, once a sanctuary of creativity, was now a battleground of fear and fiction. Amelia Gray was no ordinary writer. Her words had a way of seeping into the minds of her readers, of burrowing deep into their souls. Her characters were flawed, real, their emotions raw and exposed. This ability to connect, to touch the darkest corners of the human psyche was her gift, but it was also a curse. It had attracted him, the stalker. He saw himself reflected in her villains, his own darkness validated by her words. His letters were a chilling mix of admiration and obsession. He claimed to understand her, to see the darkness lurking beneath her carefully constructed facade. He sent her gifts, each one more personal, more disturbing than the last. A first edition of her favorite book, defaced with underlined passages. A dried red rose, its petals crumbling to dust. A lock of hair, the color a perfect match to her own. Amelia lived in fear, the constant threat of his presence casting a long shadow over her life. The weight of her deadline pressed down on Amelia, stifling her creativity. The words, usually flowing effortlessly from her fingertips, now felt forced, lifeless. The characters in her novel, once so vivid, now seemed flat, two-dimensional. Her mind, usually a whirlwind of ideas, was now a jumbled mess of fear and anxiety. The stalker had become an unwelcome muse, his presence seeping into her writing, poisoning her words. She tried to write, to lose herself in the world she was creating, but his shadow lingered, a constant reminder of the danger lurking just beyond her window. Every time she thought she had crafted the perfect sentence, a chilling thought would intrude. He will read this. He will think he knows me. The fear was paralyzing, a monstrous creature that threatened to consume her whole. Amelia knew she couldn't keep living like this, but what choice did she have? Amelia's home, once her sanctuary, had become her prison. The walls that once echoed with laughter now reverberated with silence and sorrow. The grand old manor, perched high on a windswept cliff, was a testament to a bygone era, its once bright walls now faded and cracked. The relentless sea winds had battered the structure, leaving it a shadow of its former glory. Gargoyles leered down from the rooftops, their stone faces frozen in grotesque expressions. These silent sentinels seemed to mock her plight, their eyes following her every move. The house was a labyrinth of twisting corridors and shadowy rooms, each one holding secrets best left undisturbed. The creaking floorboards and whispering drafts added to the eerie atmosphere, making Amelia feel as though she was never truly alone. Cobwebs clung to the antique furniture like ghostly shrouds, and the air hung heavy with the scent of damp wood and decay. Each room told a story of neglect and abandonment, mirroring Amelia's own sense of desolation. The grandfather clock in the hallway, its pendulum frozen in time, served as a constant reminder of the life that was slipping away from Amelia, stolen by fear and isolation. The ticking that once marked the passage of time now stood still, much like her own existence. Yet, amidst the decay, there was beauty. The overgrown garden, though wild and untamed, held a certain charm, with flowers that still bloomed defiantly against the odds. The stained glass window in her study, depicting a solitary woman gazing out at a stormy sea, resonated with Amelia's own sense of isolation. The vibrant colors and intricate design were a stark contrast to the gloom that pervaded the rest of the house. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there was a certain melancholic beauty to be found. The stormy sea outside mirrored the turmoil within her, yet also offered a glimmer of hope, a promise that the storm would eventually pass. One evening, a lifeline arrived in the form of an invitation. Amelia's best friend, Daya, a whirlwind of energy and color in Amelia's often monochromatic world, had managed to secure them access to the most exclusive club opening in the city. Daya believed a night of music, dancing, and carefree fun was exactly what Amelia needed to break free from the suffocating grip of fear. Amelia hesitated, leaving the perceived safety of her home, even for a night, filled her with trepidation. The thought of venturing out into the world where he could be lurking around any corner sent a shiver down her spine. But Daya, with her infectious laughter and unwavering belief in Amelia's strength, wouldn't take no for an answer. Perhaps, just perhaps, a night of anonymity, of losing herself in the rhythm of the music and the warmth of Daya's company, was what Amelia needed to reclaim a fragment of the life that had been stolen from her. The club pulsed with life, a cacophony of music, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. The VIP section, perched above the throngs of people, offered a sense of detachment from the frenetic energy below. Daya, a natural in the spotlight, was quickly swept up in conversation, her laughter ringing out above the pulsating music. Amelia, however, felt a familiar sense of unease creep in. The shadows seemed deeper here, the laughter more forced. She scanned the faces, each one a stranger, yet each one holding the potential to conceal the face of her stalker. A man, his face obscured by the dim lighting and the brim of his hat, caught her eye. His gaze was intense, unwavering, sending a jolt of fear through Amelia's veins. He was watching her, studying her, a predator sizing up its prey. She tried to convince herself it was just her paranoia, but deep down, a primal instinct screamed at her to run. Suddenly, the man from across the room began to move towards her, his movements deliberate, predatory. Panic welled up inside Amelia, threatening to choke her. She tried to melt back into the shadows, to disappear into the throngs of people, but it was too late. He was standing in front of her, a smirk playing on his lips. "Enjoying the party, Miss Gray?" he asked, his voice a low, menacing purr. Amelia's blood ran cold. The voice, smooth as silk yet laced with an undercurrent of menace, was one she recognized from countless nightmares. It was the voice from her stalker's letters, the voice that haunted her every waking moment. Her stalker was no longer a figment of her imagination, a shadowy figure lurking in the periphery of her life. He was real, he was here, and he knew exactly who she was. Terror threatened to consume Amelia, but a spark of defiance ignited within her. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, the darkness closing in, but she refused to let it break her spirit. She refused to be a victim, to let this man, this monster, control her life any longer. The fear that had once paralyzed her was now the fuel that drove her forward, igniting a fire within her soul. She had a choice to make: succumb to the fear that had held her captive for so long, or fight back, to reclaim her life and her voice. The crossroads she faced was not just a physical one, but a metaphor for the battle raging within her. With a strength she didn't know she possessed, Amelia pushed past the man, his surprised gasp music to her ears. Each step she took was a declaration of her newfound resolve, a testament to her inner strength. She raced through the club, dodging dancing bodies and ignoring Daya's calls. The pulsating music and flashing lights blurred into the background as her singular focus became escape. She had to get out, to escape the suffocating confines of the club, to break free from the suffocating grip of fear. The night air outside promised freedom, a stark contrast to the oppressive atmosphere inside. As she burst through the club doors and into the cool night air, Amelia knew she could never go back to the life she had lived before. The fresh air filled her lungs, and with it came a sense of clarity and purpose. She had stared into the abyss, and the abyss had stared back. In that moment of confrontation, she had found something within herself she never knew existed, and somewhere in that terrifying confrontation, Amelia Gray found her voice, a voice that refused to be silenced. It was a voice of strength, resilience, and unwavering determination, ready to face whatever came next. The first rays of dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and orange, a stark contrast to the darkness that had cloaked Amelia's world for so long. Exhausted but exhilarated, she stood on the cliff top, the wind whipping strands of hair across her face. The encounter at the club had been a terrifying ordeal, but it had also been a strange sort of liberation. The fear was still there, lurking in the shadows, but it no longer held the same power over her. Amelia knew the road ahead would be long and arduous. Her stalker was still out there, but she was no longer willing to let him dictate the terms of her life. She would write again, her words imbued with a newfound strength and conviction. She would face her fears one by one until they no longer held any power over her. The shadows might linger, but Amelia Gray would no longer be defined by the darkness.